Hey, everybody, welcome in on a Wednesday night to this episode of Deep in the Heart of Longhorns Sports, episode 11. It is the eve of a huge announcement in the recruiting cycle for 2024. In fact, two big announcements go down tomorrow, both from Duncanville High School, one of which we will be talking about today. Make sure you hit the like and subscribe button to the channel if you enjoy this content. If you're a fan of the Texas Longhorns in general, I'm sure you will love this content. Hopefully, give us your feedback. What can we do better? And make sure you go check out the great content that Emmy and I have been putting out the past couple weeks on the main feed. You can find our podcasts on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts for the most part. You can watch us on YouTube. Give us your feedback, and hopefully you enjoy this content. We're here tonight to discuss a very important matter, and that matter pertains to one of the elite prospects for the 2024 recruiting class, and somebody I would define as probably the only prospect for that matter, I would define as a must get in the 2024 recruiting cycle for Steve Sarkisian in this Texas football staff, who, let's be honest, through 2 years at Texas, this staff has made a name for itself, not by winning on the football field. That part is still being worked on and will hopefully take care of itself, as there are big expectations for the team this year. But this staff with Steve Sarkisian, Kyle Flood, Jeff Banks, the list goes on and on. They have made a name for themselves and ingratiated themselves with the fans with what they've done in recruiting, finishing with the number 3 overall class last year with 7 super blue chips. A super blue chip being a prospect that signs as a high 4-star or 5-star recruit. 7 super blue chips signed in last year's class. That included guys like Arch Manning, the number 1 overall prospect in the country, the number 1 quarterback in the country, as we all know very well by now. They ended up being able to flip Anthony Hill, the 5-star linebacker out of Denton, Texas. Guys like C.J. Baxter, the 5-star running back that they brought in last year's recruiting class. Jonte Cook, a freshman I think is going to make a huge impact on this year's team. The 5-star receiver from DeSoto High School, Malik Muhammad. The list goes on and on, right? Last year's class was very top-heavy, and they did a really good job. I mean, go back to the year before with the big offensive line class with Kelvin Banks, the 5-star left tackle that was got all Big 12 honors and stuff like that. His freshman year is already one of the best left tackles in the entire country. And if I had to guess, will probably end up an All-American before it's all said and done at the end of this year. There are high expectations there. Cam Williams is a guy from that class that looks to get some playing time this year. DJ Campbell. That was the big offensive line class, and recruiting has taken off since then. Every recruiting class is different. Last year's was really strong, as we all know. This year, things were really great through the month of June and July, early July. But things have died down for Texas here in the past couple weeks, as they're now waiting on the big fish, the really big fish, the 5-stars, the super blue chip guys to make their commitments. And that's why we're here today, is because tomorrow, Colin Simmons, the number 1 edge in the country by 3 out of the 4 major recruiting services. The edge out of Duncanville High School for the 2024 class, number one player in the state of Texas, the can't miss prospect that I mentioned a couple minutes ago that Texas must get for many reasons when it's all said and done on signing day in December. He will make his announcement for his initial commitment tomorrow at 2 p.m. on the 24/7 YouTube channel, 24/7 Sports YouTube channel. Now, again, 5-star plus prospect, consensus 5-star throughout the industry, the number one ranked player in the state of Texas by 3 out of the 4 major recruiting services, the number one edge in the entire country, number one edge player in the entire country from Duncanville High School, who led his team to a state championship just last year, was a major part of that. Just completed his junior season and will be entering his senior season at Duncanville. He will make his announcement tomorrow at 2 p.m. And it's a much anticipated announcement. Now, let's real quickly address who Colin Simmons, the player, is. He is, you can go watch his junior season highlights on rivals.com. Just look up his profile and you can find his huddle highlights. 22 and a half sacks last year at Duncanville, 80 tackles. Just unbelievable tape. Unbelievable tape. I mean, you only get one of these edge rushing prospects, one of these elite guys every 3 to 5 years if you're lucky. I mean, he is really can't miss. The best player in the state of Texas. He's a speed rushing dynamo. The most dominant defensive player in the 2024 cycle. As I mentioned, 22 and a half sacks. He's not the biggest guy in the world. 6'2", 6'2" and a half, 225 pounds, 34-inch arm reported prior to this season. Really grew into his own as a sophomore, though. Played defensive end for Duncanville. Can play hands down on the line of scrimmage or in a two-point stance. Rush from pretty much anywhere. Has great first step quickness, play speed, extremely elite dip to get around the edge. Extremely disruptive, good motor. I mean, he is elite on every single level. Words can't do it justice. You just have to go watch this kid's tape. He is one of the must-get recruits in this recruiting cycle. And Texas must get him however they can make that happen. They have to land Colin Simmons, or else not that this 2024 recruiting cycle will feel like a failure, but it won't ever reach the heights that we've now come to expect from a recruiting perspective since Steve Sarkisian and his staff have been at Texas. There is now an expectation after what this staff has done the past 2 years, especially last year in particular, that Texas finishes with the top 5 class year after year after year. And right now, I think they're sitting somewhere inside the top 20, but they got some work to do if they want to get back to a top 5 class for this cycle. And it starts by getting Colin Simmons. Colin Simmons, in my opinion, and this is just me speaking, and then we're going to sort of get into where this recruitment stands, where it started at the beginning of the week, where it started at the beginning of the summer, and where it is now, and the things that I'm hearing as we're less than 24 hours from his decision being announced. In my opinion, he will have an Arch Manning level effect on this recruiting class, this 2024 recruiting class, if Texas can land him, but from a defensive perspective. There's a stigma out there, and I think it's I think it's legitimate, and I think it's for good reason, that Texas despite all the big battles they've been winning the past 2 to 3 years in recruiting, Texas has done a poor job recruiting the defensive line and the edge rush positions. That's still a hole in Sark and his staff's recruiting armor, so to speak. They've gotten guys, but they haven't gotten the Kelvin Banks, the elite 5-star, elite of the elite guys, the Jonte Cook. You go back all the way to, I guess it was 2020, the Bijan Robinson, game changer type guys, 5-star, consensus 5-star type guys on the defensive line and at the edge rushing positions. Texas hasn't had a 10-sack season by an individual player in, I think, over 10 years. The highest since in the past decade was like Charles Omenihu with 9.5, maybe 5 or so years back. And Charles Omenihu, he's a good player now in the NFL. But Texas has failed to close on the elite guys in this position group, which is why getting Colin Simmons and changing that dynamic is super important. I think Colin Simmons is going to step on a football field his freshman year and make an immediate impact as potentially a high single-digit, low double-digit sack kind of guy. I think he's that good. He's going to be a guy who starts right away for the school that he commits to. He can't miss. Texas has to land this commitment, whether it's tomorrow or just getting him in the program by signing day. Flipping his commitment, that's something that this Texas staff has done a great job of in the past as well, which is why if Colin Simmons doesn't commit to Texas tomorrow, the insiders, what I'm hearing is that Texas will not panic. This recruitment, and that's the point I really want to drive home, is that along with him being a can't-miss prospect and a guy that Texas has to get, tomorrow's decision won't be the end of Colin Simmons' recruitment. In fact, it might just be the start of his recruitment. He's making a decision because he doesn't want, and this is smart, by the way, a lot of elite guys do this. They want to get their announcements in before their season starts, so it doesn't serve as a distraction to anything that they have to do during the high school football season. Because their mission, once the high school football season starts, is to go put out more really good tape, to elevate their profile, go continue to develop, and of course, the team goal being go win a state championship, as that's the expectation yearly at Duncanville High School, where Colin Simmons plays. He wants to make this decision early because he doesn't want it to serve as a distraction to the Duncanville team once the season starts here in just a couple weeks. He's a can't-miss prospect. Texas needs to get him, whether that be tomorrow or down the road by signing day, because of the gap that's existed in recruiting on the defensive line and at the edge positions. And at the same time, like, tomorrow might just be the start of his recruitment. Tomorrow isn't the final, decision. Now, he could very well make his decision tomorrow and stick with his school all the way through December when National Signing Day happens. I think right after Christmas, somewhere around then. He could very well stick to his school The decision he makes tomorrow could very well end up being the school that he signs with on National Signing Day. But he's almost 100% going to take visits during the season to the schools that he's still considering and the school that he commits to tomorrow, whoever that may be, which we'll get to in a minute. And the school that he commits to tomorrow is going to have to continue to keep that relationship going, keep things on stable ground, because the schools that are on the losing end tomorrow are going to become more motivated to try to flip his commitment. The challenge tomorrow for the school that wins his commitment is going to be keeping his commitment. It's not over after tomorrow. So, again, he could very well stick to his commitment all the way through National Signing Day. But with these high-profile recruits, the five-star guys, especially in the world of NIL, the recruitment doesn't end tomorrow. This thing is going to go through November and December. Now, there will be reason to celebrate for the school that earns his commitment tomorrow, because the advantage that you have is that you are now playing from ahead rather than from behind. Most of the time, it is much easier to play from that vantage point, to play from ahead, when you have a guy's commitment and you've earned that trust initially, than to try to flip him in the process of everything that goes on during the season. So there's a lot to this recruitment. It's not going to be the end all be all tomorrow. This thing is going to go through November up until December when National Signing Day happens. He's a must-get guy for Texas because of the gap that exists, the void that exists in Texas's recruitment of defensive linemen and edge prospects of this ilk. And it needs to flip, because that's going to be of utmost importance, the line of scrimmage, when they enter the SEC starting next season. Now, they've started to do really well on the offensive line. That's great. And everywhere else, I mean, Texas has recruited the secondary at an elite level. And I think the 2024 secondary class is going to be really, really good. Kobe Black is another guy that we'll talk about another time. He just dropped his top 5 schools today. And Texas is right up there, I think, in contention. They've recruited the secondary at an elite level. They signed a very, very good linebacker class last year, headlined by the 5-star out of Denton, Anthony Hill. They're recruiting the offensive line, receivers, quarterbacks, obviously, very, very well. Everywhere else on their roster, this staff has done an excellent job of getting the super blue chip, high profile, 5 stars, high 4 stars type guys, stacking those guys year after year after year. And they continue to do that. But there's a big void, and every Texas fan, and I think even other fans of other schools, will tell you that a void exists at Texas when it comes to closing on guys on the defensive line in edge, at the edge position, of a guy like Colin Simmons's ilk. So that's why they need to get Colin Simmons. That's kind of what the state of his recruitment and how it stands right now. This thing is going to go to November, December, regardless of what happens tomorrow. But the school that wins out tomorrow will feel a lot better about themselves and will feel very comfortable that they just have to try to hold on to his commitment rather than the schools that are playing from behind. And Colin Simmons, elite player. Just go watch his tape. He's elite. There's a reason why he's the number one edge in the country. One of the best defenders, if not the best defensive prospect in the country, and the number one player in the state of Texas. And I can't remember nor name the time that Texas landed the number one high school prospect in the state of Texas. So, with all that being said, where does this recruitment stand right now in this moment in time? Well, as you may know, it's down to 3 schools. He will be picking from 3 schools tomorrow: Texas, LSU, and the University of Miami. Again, that's Texas, LSU, and the University of Miami. Those are the schools in his top 3. A&M's kind of been on the outside looking in, and they could still possibly find their way into this recruitment. But right now, the schools that he will be picking from are Texas, LSU, and Miami. I've heard some good things on the Miami front, but for a long time now, going back to the start of the summer, this has really been about Texas and LSU. This, to most people within the industry, is a Texas LSU battle 100%. Now, let's kind of address the timeline. I kind of got to give you guys some context here to kind of set up where things are right now. It's been Texas LSU for a while. He's made 6 visits to each school. And that's one thing about Colin Simmons, if you don't know him already. This kid knows how to play the game. There haven't been many leaks at this point as it pertains to what he's actually going to do. He knows how to get fans riled up, do the whole cryptic tweet thing. He knows how to play the game, and he's kept things very close to the vest, at least on what he's going to do personally. But we all know, based on the interviews he's done, people within the industry that have sources to both programs, that this is a Texas LSU battle to the finish, unless someone else does something significant to change that. And the expectation is that tomorrow, the pick will either be Texas or LSU. So for the sake of that being the case, that's what we're going to focus on right now. If we go back to May, this is a couple months after his junior season and had a course wrapped up. He set up some official visits. He set up an official visit to Miami on June 9th. Oregon, which was a factor in this recruitment for a while, but kind of fell off and conceded, on June 16th, and then Texas, June 23rd. And he still has an official visit to LSU, I believe, scheduled for November 11th, which is the weekend that they play, I think, the Florida Gators. So he set up his official visits. Then June comes, he takes the visits to Miami, Oregon. Good things come out of those visits. Late June comes, June 23rd, 2023. That's when he took his official visit to Texas. And up until that point, the leader in the clubhouse was thought to be LSU all the way. Texas had some ground to make up going into that Texas visit, or going into this visit on June 23rd. He takes his official visit to Texas, and there is a momentum shift coming out of that visit. He was swept away by the good vibes that came out of that recruitment, and there were some even There was even indication within the industry that on that visit, he may have given a silent commitment to Texas. So he didn't announce it publicly, but there have been some reports, some speculation, I should say, that he may have given, like he was so blown away by the things that were said to him, what was conveyed to him, the messages conveyed to him on that visit, that he may have given a silent commitment to Texas on that visit. That visit went so well that ever since then, up until the start of this week or the past week and a half, for most of the summer, because of that visit, Simmons, to most within the industry, has been leaning Texas for a lot of reasons, which I'll try to get into later. As early as the weekend of July 4th, in fact, there were whispers within the Texas program and on the outside, from an outsider's perspective, that Simmons might even make a commitment at some point during that weekend or during the following week. And there were a lot of rumors during the month of July that he was going to announce at some point, but he ended up not announcing. The dead period passes, and just a couple weeks ago is when things got a little murky. He leans Texas for most of the summer after he takes that visit. July 27th, which was, I guess, 2 weeks ago now, pretty much, he returned to LSU for an unofficial visit for the first time in 2023 with his fellow Duncanville teammate. I think he's a high 4-star, maybe a 5-star running back, Caden Durham, who's also in the 2024 recruiting class, and who will also announce his decision with Colin Simmons tomorrow at Duncanville High School. And people should know, like, LSU, that's been Colin Simmons' first love. That was Colin Simmons' first love. So on that visit just a couple weeks ago, Colin Simmons was reminded just how much he loves LSU, Baton Rouge, the whole program. And coming out of that visit, things started to change a little bit. It had been Texas most of the summer after that official visit to Texas. Coming out of that visit, things changed. And ever since then, up until today, which I'll get to in a minute, or the past like 24, 48 hours, things all of a sudden were starting to lean LSU's way. LSU insiders, LSU beat writers, people within the industry felt pretty confident that earlier this week, the announcement would be for LSU tomorrow. But despite all of that, the feeling is tonight among most in the industry that the announcement tomorrow, as things have kind of swung back in the other direction the past 24, 48 hours, that Simmons will ultimately announce for Texas tomorrow, which is exciting if you're a Texas fan, especially one that follows recruiting like myself. But the whole thing about this recruitment is nobody really knows. It's really a lot of reading the tea leaves and guesswork at this point, because Simmons has done such a great job of keeping things close to the vest. But the feeling is tonight, and it's one of the reasons that I'm on here, just preparing the world for his decision, because it's a hugely anticipated decision tomorrow. There's nobody else like him in this recruiting class, in this recruiting cycle for 2024. And he's a must-get prospect for Texas. But it's really close between Texas and LSU. But the past 48 hours, things have started to lean Texas again. kind of been a crazy week. Excuse me. Let me take a sip of water. If you would have asked me 48 hours ago, honestly, who I thought Colin Simmons would announce for on Thursday, I would have told you LSU. Based on everything I was hearing leading out of that visit, I would have told you LSU. He was swept away on that visit. He was reminded of how much he likes LSU and Baton Rouge and that whole environment. And there was probably some negative recruiting against Texas done on that visit, which we won't get into right now, but that probably played a part in swaying him just a little bit. But the past 24 hours, LSU mods have become less and less confident. There's a sense that LSU at this point might be conceding and that Texas will most likely earn his commitment tomorrow. So it's been a wild recruitment. And that's kind of the shortened Cliff Notes version of what's happened over the summer and how this thing has sort of shaped out to really be a Texas LSU 50-50, 60-40 type battle, swinging in both directions. And Colin Simmons himself has done a great job playing the game, keeping things a mystery, if you will. And the most interesting part of what came out of that LSU official visit that he took the weekend of July 27th, just about, I guess it was 2 weeks ago now, is that a couple days after he comes out of that visit, a couple days after, he announces on August 2nd that he would be announcing his college decision on August 10th, which is tomorrow. And that gave people within the industry even more confidence as they started to read the tea leaves and speak to people with inside the on the LSU insiders. That gave them even more confidence that the decision would be for LSU, because it's just, if you sort of read the tea leaves there, like, it's kind of weird that he would set his commitment date right after an LSU visit. But at the same time, you can look at that and go, well, he may have gone to LSU and, said, this isn't for me. I know where I want to be, and that's Texas. But that was an interesting part. He did set his commitment date pretty much right after that LSU visit. And that's what's given some very, I guess, mystery to his decision tomorrow. Another weird thing about that is his teammate at Duncanville, the running back that I mentioned earlier, Caden Durham, also set his commitment for tomorrow. And the only team that both players have in their top three is LSU. Both were on that LSU visit. So it's just kind of like, if you read the tea leaves there, it could be that they're both announcing for LSU tomorrow. But again, in the past 24 hours or so, things are trending Texas. And that's exciting. The last thing I want to talk about is NIL. And I don't want to say it's the main reason that things are trending towards Texas. An announcement for Texas tomorrow. But we'd be pretty naive to not acknowledge the fact that from what everyone within the industry is hearing, Texas has a big advantage in this recruitment from an NIL perspective. The sense is that Texas will not be beat by LSU from an NIL standpoint. LSU just really can't compete on an NIL from an NIL perspective with Texas. The Texas One Fund has done a great job. LSU just doesn't really have the money, the NIL money invested in their football program that Texas now does with the Texas One Fund. The sense is that Texas, if Colin Simmons ends up at Texas, NIL will definitely have a large NIL will be a big reason why. Texas isn't going to be beaten on the NIL front. And it's not that LSU doesn't have an incredibly strong NIL game. They do. Look at the things that they're doing in other sports. Look at women's basketball with Angel Reese. Look at what they just did with their baseball team winning the national championship. But full stop, and this has been reported even by mods on the LSU side, that LSU can't compete with Texas from an NIL standpoint. And that's giving everyone within the industry even more confidence that Texas will eventually land Colin Simmons, whether that be tomorrow or by National Signing Day. And it's been a big reason why I don't think Texas is going to panic if they don't end up getting Colin Simmons tomorrow. It's because they can flex their NIL muscle. And I think they're going to. They're going to do whatever is within their power to go out and bring Colin Simmons to Austin, to make him stay home. I think from an emotional perspective, like an emotional feeling standpoint, LSU might have an advantage there. But from a business perspective and a logistics perspective, Texas has a big advantage. But on the NIL front, Texas isn't going to be beat. And that's been reported by basically everyone within the industry. And it's giving people more confidence that in the end, whether it be tomorrow or by National Signing Day, that Colin Simmons will be a Longhorn. And that is the ultimate goal, because he's a can't-miss, must-get prospect for the University of Texas, Coach Sark and staff. Just the bottom line. There are some other factors that you have to consider. He's been leaning towards the Longhorns for most of the summer. Leaning hard towards Texas for most of the summer. Coming out of that official visit. The past week, it's been reported more 50-50. Some people leaning LSU, but for the long time, Texas has been a strong leader in this recruitment, and that gives people still a lot of confidence, despite some of the things that have been reported about him potentially announcing for LSU tomorrow. This past week, Texas has, for a while now, had a pretty good lead for Colin Simmons in this recruitment process. He's visited Texas 6 times in the past 19 months. Family is incredibly important to Colin Simmons. He has a really, really close relationship with his younger brother, And that's going to play a big part in, I think where he ends up going is it's a shorter distance from Austin to Duncanville than it is from, Baton Rouge to Duncanville. I think that's a big part. Staying home, staying close to his family, great relationship with his parents, especially his mom and his younger brother. He wants to stay close to his mom and younger brother. The NIL front, as I mentioned, Texas isn't going to be beat there. If education matters at all, which it does to Colin Simmons, and he's voiced that, there's not really comparing one of the best public universities in the world to LSU. I mean, Texas wins out there. Simmons has voiced the idea that he actually really likes, staying in Texas, playing for the flagship university of Texas in his home state. He wants to play in the SEC. Texas is going to the SEC. There's a lot going in Texas's direction right now. So my plan is that tomorrow night I'll be right back here to discuss what his decision actually is. Hopefully, we'll be talking about Colin Simmons' commitment to Texas and what that means and all that sort of stuff. But either way, I'll be back, whether he commits to LSU, Texas, or Miami. Be back to discuss that, what that means for the Texas program, Texas 2024 recruiting cycle. I'll dive a little deeper into in-state recruiting as a whole and what that's looking like for 2024, the state of in-state recruiting within Texas. And I'll also talk some fall camp as that we're now just like a week or so into fall camp and we need to talk some actual football. But that's going to do it here for episode 11, the Colin Simmons breakdown / decision preview on decision eve. Again, Colin Simmons, 5-star edge, consensus 5-star edge prospect for the 2024 recruiting cycle, the number one player in the state of Texas by 3 out of 4 major recruiting services. Will announce his commitment tomorrow. He'll decide mostly between Texas and LSU, but Miami is a third team that is in this. And it's a hugely anticipated announcement. So that's my breakdown of the Colin Simmons recruitment. We'll wait to see what his decision is tomorrow. It's a big one. And we'll be back on this exact channel tomorrow to break it all down, talk some fall camp, and talk some more recruiting. But until then, peace out. Hook 'em horns. Enjoy your evening. And let's hope Colin Simmons is a Longhorn when we speak next tomorrow evening. Goodbye.